On today's Locked On Jayhawks, AJ Storr is a Jayhawk.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. You can find our show here with Locked On Jayhawks anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. Please give us a 5-star review. Please hit the like button on YouTube. It very helps us out on that end of things. That was all bad grammar, but nonetheless, you get the point here. We're going to be talking AJ Storr on today's episode of the show. He is the Wisconsin forward transfer, one of the top transfer targets for everybody in the portal. He picked Kansas. We're going to get into the deep dive on what he brings to the team, how he fits in with KU, and what it means for the rest of the offseason for the Jayhawks. First, this episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I'll admit it, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Play Store. Let's start with this. AJ Storr picks Kansas. He basically could have gone anywhere he wanted. Basically, that's the level of basically, this is a 5-star from the transfer portal perspective. So, any school would have loved to bring on AJ Storr in the transfer portal. Here's what he posted on Twitter. With great excitement and humility, I announce my commitment to the University of Kansas basketball program. Joining the Jayhawks is a dream realized, and I'm incredibly honored for this opportunity to be a part of the tradition and culture of Kansas basketball. All glory to God. I don't know if, for a lot of guys, but the fact that he said joining the Jayhawks is a dream realized, and we already know Riley Kugel grew up and he had the Kansas shirt and, lived briefly in the Olathe Overland Park area, and at one point probably was a KU fan. And we know that Zeke Mayo, grew up in Lawrence. That can't hurt, having a care level of having guys who are passionate about being at Kansas. So I think that's kind of cool with that trend continuing on. The one thing that's kind of weird in all this, and I'll just bring it up now, this is the 7th school for AJ Storr in 7 years, dating back to high school. This will be his 3rd college in 3 years at the collegiate level. He has 2 years left to play. He's going to be joining after his sophomore year. He'll be a junior for 2024 to 2025. But the fact that he could just be an NBA player at the end of next season, but knowing that, maybe don't view him as a 2-year guy. If he ends up being a KU 2 years, Kansas is going to have a better chance to keep a kid around because they're going to have all the amenities and NIL and everything like that. But I guess I'm viewing it as a 1-year rental for that reason. His girlfriend transferred in, so I don't know, maybe better chance there. And she's kind of a local kid in that regard. There was that NIL rumor that was out there several weeks ago about Kansas offered this and he wanted this, and who knows what the truth in any of that is. But here's the information on AJ Storr: 6'7", 205 pound, kind of a power wing, who is just kind of a mercenary scorer and an absolute bucket getter. He started every game for a Wisconsin team that earned a 5 seed. Obviously, lost pretty big to James Madison in the first round of the tournament, but Wisconsin actually finished 10 spots higher than Kansas on KenPom this season. And he was the leading scorer on that team. So, obviously he comes over to Kansas and you expect him to do big things. And it's not like it's some big jump. He still was at a power conference level and everything like that. And he did that on a team who ranked 304th in the country in tempo. So plays on a faster team, which Kansas is usually more neutral in tempo. They'll go when they want to go. They'll slow it when they want to slow it and call out plays with Bill Self, but probably get more opportunities for scoring, though, on a more complete team with Kansas. Who knows where that goes? But anyway, 43.4% from the field for AJ Storr, 32% on 4.2 attempts per game from 3. So, kind of about average efficiency between both of those. 81.2% at the foul line, though, is really good for AJ Storr. He didn't really do much else besides score the basketball. The good news is he's really good at scoring the basketball. Only 3.9 rebounds per game. Now, he did play next to 2 bigs in Wisconsin, so maybe not asked to rebound as much. Only 0.9 assists per game, not much of a passer compared to 1.6 turnovers. Only 0.6 steals and 0.1 blocks, though Wisconsin's defensive scheme doesn't really lend itself to a lot of chaotic stats. But, Bill Self is going to try to unlock some of these, try to make him a better defender, try to make him a better rebounder. But the scoring is NBA level at this point in time for him. Obviously you'd like to see the efficiency go up, but he shot almost 34% of Wisconsin's shots when he was on the floor. So he was by far the go-to guy for Wisconsin. Think about this. Wisconsin goes from being a below 500 team to one that finished, I don't remember if they were actually below 500. It was like right around that. They finished 61st in the country in KenPom. AJ Storr joins the team and they become a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. And that wasn't all Storr, guys improve and whatever else, other additions that they had, but like that was a big reason why. And point being, he wasn't surrounded with as much talent as he's going to be surrounded with at Kansas. So like he kind of had to take a lot of the burden at Wisconsin. He's still going to have to take a good burden at Kansas. You're bringing him in to be that guy, but he's not going to have to do it as much. Like by comparison, Hunter Dickinson took 29.5% of the shots when he was on the court. AJ Storr is 5% above that. He is going to probably take a little less shots, and they're going to be more efficient shots, more in the rhythm of the offense, which is good. So, with more good talent around him, that'll help. And obviously the efficiency, I would think, goes up this year at Kansas, plus another year and another year of experience. Overall, he was second team all Big Ten. So you're talking about a guy who, if he would have come back to Wisconsin this year, probably preseason all first team Big Ten. So he might be preseason all first team Big 12 as well coming in this year. He was also Big Ten all tournament team. Now, the year prior, he was at St. John's, where he averaged 8.8 points per game on lower volume, but shot 40.4% from three. So that's a perfect example. Maybe he's somewhere in between. Maybe he shoots 3.5 threes per game, which would be in between his St. John and Wisconsin days. And maybe he shoots between those two numbers, 36% from three. You'd be happy with that if you're KU, especially with what else he adds as a scorer. He ended up on the All Big East freshman team. In their lone tournament game this year against James Madison, he had 13 points, only 5 of 14, but that was right after he dominated in the Big Ten tournament. In the 4 games he played in the Big Ten tournament, he averaged 22.5 points per game. And of the team's 70 points that they had in a win over Northwestern, he had almost half of them. He had 30. So he was killer in that tournament setting. He actually played against Kansas for the Bahamian national team when they went down there in Puerto Rico, and he averaged 15 points and 5 rebounds per game in the 2 meetings. So had some success there. I'm sure that was maybe the start for Bill Self being like, oh, who's this kid, right? Things that stick out about his statistic profile, some of the deeper analytic numbers, whatever you want to talk about. Great foul changer, I guess is a way of putting it. He was top 5 in the Big Ten in avoiding fouls in Big Ten only games. And he was also top 10 in Big Ten only games in drawing fouls. Kansas didn't get to the free throw line a ton last year, but he does a good job avoiding fouls. He does a good job drawing fouls. Against KenPom top 50 opponents, he upped his 3-point percentage to 37% in 17 games this year. And for his 2-year career, in 30 games against KenPom top 50 opponents, he shot 38% from three. So he brings his game up when he's playing the better opponents. He ranked in the 62nd percentile on defense, according to Synergy, which that'll play. If you're talking about a kid who is a really good bucket getter, you're just asking for him to be an average, above average defender. Well, he was above average at Wisconsin. Now, he was only 11th percentile at St. John's. So is part of that the Wisconsin scheme that they were able to make up for some stuff? Or is it improvement? If you can just get him to be an average, above average defender, I think you're happy with it. And I will say, and I don't know what benefits him better, playing against threes or playing against fours, but I think at Kansas he will play some 4, which maybe that'll help the defense because you're going up against maybe a not as athletic wing guard types. I don't know. 64th percentile in spot-up shooting, so above average at spot-up shooting. 70th is a pick-and-roll ball handler, so he can initiate a scoring drive. 76th percentile in transition. He is a power wing. Kansas likes to have wings that can grab and go. AJ Storr can do just that. Only 38th percentile in handoffs. He was 90th percentile as a cutter. That'll work well off the ball with, Hunter Dickinson presumably back and Dajuan Harris. Only 21st percentile in posting up. We've seen Bill Self like to do that with bigger wings, maybe not as much with Storr here. 61st percentile in catch and shoot, where he was 35% from three on catch and shoot opportunities, which he's going to be asked to do more of at Kansas. So that's a better percentage than the 32. Also 59th percentile in dribble jumpers, so he can get his own shot above average at that off the dribble. He was only 5 of 25. That's 8th percentile in runners. So that's something that you want to kind of avoid, him shooting those little floaters and runners and everything. But per CBB analytics, he was in the 73rd percentile at the rim, where he shot 64%. So really good at the rim. But he was only 36th percentile in the paint twos. So twos that were in the paint, but outside of 4.5 feet. So really good at the rim, not as good on those floaters, which kind of goes into that. But he was 60th percentile mid-range twos. He shot a lot of those. So, that'll be something to keep an eye on. And then almost 31% on above the break threes, 43% on corner threes, which Kansas can take advantage of that with same side actions when you get Hunter Dickinson the ball in the post and have him in the corner. That was 74th percentile in the country. So let's get to how he fits with KU and what it means for the rest of the offseason on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. I've been told I'm a competitive person, and I have a competitive side, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with your friends. You can charge them rent on your iconic properties, just like in classic Monopoly. But now you can also heist their vaults of riches. That's a new feature than the original board game, and the leaderboards show me who is the biggest Monopoly tycoon. But it's not just the competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends too, and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Play Store today. This episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. That's how Bill Self feels in the transfer portal. It's like, oh, I found AJ Storr, Riley Kugel, Zeke Mayo. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part's guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. I wish Bill Self, I'm sure he wishes that he had that part though, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home that huge win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Okay, how does AJ Storr fit in with the roster? Well, let's talk scholarships first of all. So Kansas right now, they were at 12 scholarship players. Then Johnny Furphy declared for the draft. Now AJ Storr comes in. So theoretically, if Furphy stays in the NBA, you'd still be at 12 scholarships with AJ Storr coming in. Kansas is in a position where they can play this year with 12 scholarships, or they can play with 13 scholarships because they still have to get rid of one due to the NCAA penalty. But they could do that next year or this year. So point being, even if Johnny Furphy is like, oh, I want to come back now, then they just have 13 scholarship players and it would be fine. And it also allows you to be like, oh, we have 12. If we think Furphy's still in the draft, you can still bring on Rylan Griffin, right? You can still bring on some of these guys and play with 13. And hypothetically, honestly, even if you get to a point where it's like, oh, we need to have a 14th scholarship and that doesn't exist. There was just an article written in The Athletic, and this is something that was only a matter of time before teams took advantage of, talking about some teams like Michigan and I think Nebraska and some other schools that basically in football are basically saying, hey, we don't want to have to cut a kid or we don't want to have to force a kid out the door. And we would need an 86th or 87th scholarship in football. We'll just pay them an NIL that they can cover their school money. That is already happening now. There's no reason Kansas couldn't do that in basketball as well. But, we've talked about it with every commitment KU's had so far in the transfer portal. KU is looking for scoring creation, shooting, and versatility. Yes, they're looking for defense as well. And I think all these moves have been more offense-centered. The defense, I don't think they've been like negatives to defense. I think Zeke Mayo probably profiles to being a below average to average defender. I think Riley Kugel, probably same thing. I think with Storr, maybe average to above average defender. But it's not like you're bringing on just like a bad defender necessarily. But you have added a ton of scoring creation, shooting, and that versatility. Mayo can play the 1 and the 2, give you another ball handler. Kugel can play, the 2 and the 3, maybe even the 1 in the pinch, maybe even a 4 in the pinch. If you can land Rylan Griffin, he accomplishes a bit of playing the 2 and the 3. AJ Storr can play the 3 and the 4 and gives you versatility to where, you really felt like KJ Adams was really your only true four-man on the roster. It's like, well, Zach Clements, maybe he could play there, but he's more of a center. And it's like, well, Kugel maybe could play there in a pinch, but he's still only 6'5". And it's like, okay, now AJ Storr can play the 4, and you feel fine with that being the case, right? And you have KJ Adams, but it's like, who else is going to play there? Maybe Marquise Passmore. I don't know. But now you have that with AJ Storr. And the shooting was, about average in terms of efficiency at Wisconsin, but with more good players at Kansas, the efficiency can go up in another year. He's just going to be better. So basically every addition that Kansas has made has added players who can either shoot and space the floor or create their own shot or both. Like in the case of Zeke Mayo, he can shoot he can create his own shot. You look at Riley Kugel. When he's right, he can shoot the basketball, but he at the very least can create his own shot. AJ Storr creates his own shot. And I mentioned this earlier on a show with Nick Short that, like, this is not the exact player. I'm not saying he's going to come in and be this guy who was, first team All-American. So I don't mean it from that. I just mean game style. When you're looking at like Rylan Griffin, who they're recruiting from Alabama, his game style is more of an Ochai Agbaji. He's going to hurt you from 3-point range, but he can every now and then on a straight line drive, throw down a dunk or something like that. And there's other things that are very different about Griffin versus Agbaji. And again, I'm not saying Griffin's going to do what Ochai Agbaji did, just the style of play. Whereas the style of play more of AJ Storr is more like a Jalen Wilson. Kind of a power wing who can create his own shots. It might not always be the most efficient, but sometimes you need somebody to take those tough shots when the shot clock is winding down, when the defense knows that you have to take the shot. And yes, that's going to be less efficient than a wide open three somebody gets. But sometimes when you're playing good teams, you're not going to get the wide open shots. You need somebody who can hit the tough shots late in a shot clock. Like Devontae Graham shot like 39% on 2-point shots or something like that his last year, but he shot well from three. He created shots. He created shots for others, right? He created spacing and gravity. And that's the types of things that all of these additions add for Kansas. So it is a great fit stylistically. It has completely overhauled the style of play and the type of team this can be. It has completely changed what this offense to be. I mean, this was the worst offense of the Bill Self era, according to KenPom. It ranked 59th in the country. You had to overhaul the offense, and Kansas certainly has done that with these three additions who figure to play a ton of minutes. I think there's going to be a fun conversation who's going to lead this team in scoring because you have a lot of options. But, as far as where he's going to play, I mentioned the 3 and the 4. He actually played like all of his minutes. There was like a few here or there that he played at the 4 at Wisconsin, but they played 2 bigs with Crowell and Wall. Now, I guess technically you could say Kansas does a lot the same too with KJ Adams and Hunter Dickinson. I don't think they'll do it as much this year as they did last year, but they'll probably still do it. So they're still going to see Storr at the 3, but I think you're going to see Storr at the 4 a lot too. And I think that versatility is really cool that you could have a lineup with, like, let's say, Dajuan Harris next to Zeke Mayo and Riley Kugel or Rylan Griffin, if you can bring him on, or there's this Kobe Bryant kid, if you can bring him on from Dayton or something. We have all this shooting, and then AJ Storr's at the 4 and Hunter Dickinson's at the 5. That is a lethal offensive lineup. And then if you need defense, you throw in KJ Adams at the 4 to close out a game. There's a lot that Kansas can do with their lineups, and I think that's really cool. And it's pretty wild how much Kansas has added to the shooting, to the shot creation, to the athleticism. Kansas went last year where it was like, especially when Kevin McCullough was out with injury, where it was like, hey, if the shot clock's winding down, who's going to take the tough shot? That's not really what Dajuan Harris is going to do. Nick Timberlake was obviously so up and down, and he wasn't really a shot creator. He was more of a try to get him an open shot and hope that he makes it. Marco Jackson, still trying to work things out. I think when Marco was right, when he had some cool highlights, he actually was kind of able to create his own shot, like in the mid-range and hit it. Just that was far from consistent, and there weren't a ton more than just flashes there. But, Furphy, as great of a transition player and 3-point shooter as he was for Kansas, wasn't somebody who was creating his own shot, necessarily. Hunter Dickinson could create his own shot from a post perspective, but what happens when a team double teams you at the end of a shot clock or something? And then it's like, okay, somebody else has to do it, right? Zeke Mayo can do that. AJ Storr can do that. Riley Kugel, when he's right, you look at the freshman version of Riley Kugel. I mean, he still did it as a sophomore. It just wasn't as efficient. He can do that. And there's a good chance that, you're going to have 2 of those guys on the court like at all times. There's going to be some times where maybe all 3 are on the court when you look at different rotations. And now you have multiple of those guys at the same time. After last year, it stretches, not really having any of them. So very big addition for Kansas. Let's talk what's next and how this affects the rest of the offseason for KU. First, this episode is brought to you by Game Time, now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee allows Game Time to take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can get their flash deals, zone deals. They're easy to find and buy MLB tickets for every kind of event in your area. You can view from all seats in the venue. Maybe you've never been to the stadium before. Well, you can see what the seat view looks like. And they have their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. And it's a panoramic view of the seat view, by the way, when you can see it. And you can also click on the little toggle button that allows you to see it with the ticket fees included, which is nice because then you're not getting blindsided what the price is going to be. And you can even have $20 off. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. It's all one word for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, how this affects and what's next for KU. Well, it sounds like they're having some visitors this weekend with Darius Acuff Jr., who is a five-star recruit, but that's for 2025, and Rylan Griffin, who's the transfer from Alabama. They already had an in-home with him. This does not eliminate them going after Rylan Griffin. Again, hypothetically, they have one scholarship open. That could be Furphy. That could be Rylan Griffin. They could just not use it. Or like I said, you can buy your way to another scholarship. Player could always leave. If you bring in Rylan Griffin, maybe that does make it more likely that a player leaves and transfers away because then there's even less minutes to be had. I don't know. Point being, you add the player and you almost figure it out later. And Griffin, I would almost argue, like, I think in a vacuum, AJ Storr is a better player, has a better chance to end up on like an all-conference team than maybe Rylan Griffin does. But Rylan Griffin, I was almost thinking was a better fit for the team. And I almost view it the same way now because you can never have enough shooting. Like, you're never like, hey, this guy is like an elite 3-point shooter. I just don't know where he fits in today's, version of basketball. This doesn't happen. So like, yes, you can still bring on Rylan Griffin. You could still have both Griffin and Storr start hypothetically. So this does not affect that. Maybe this is more indicative that Furphy is more leaning toward being gone, but again, not necessarily because of the scholarship stuff. And, hypothetically, you could even have, let's say you landed Rylan Griffin and Furphy came back and then somebody transferred away and you were flush out on scholarships there. You could still have a starting lineup with Furphy at the 4 and Storr at the 3. And I don't know, I guess hypothetically there, like Griffin at the 2 and Dajuan at the 1 and having Mayo and Kugel come off the bench. I don't know. But I guess point being, it could be, far from over for what Kansas is recruiting. Then again, you wrap up Griffin this weekend on the visit. Is Kansas's offseason done at that point in time? Or does that lead to more dominoes falling with players kind of transferring away? But point being, it's not done yet, but it gets them a step closer. And it almost makes me feel like, as far as the offseason goes, maybe this makes it more likely that KJ Adams is coming off the bench. Again, I'm not necessarily saying that's the case. I think maybe that's more of a 50-50 proposition, whether he starts or not. I do think KJ is still going to play, starter level minutes, whether he comes off the bench or not. But like, are they going to play less 2-big basketball than they did last year? Yes, I think that is going to happen. Now, how much is that? Is that 10 minutes a game? Is that 20 minutes a game? Is it 25 instead of 35 a game? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But point being, more to come in the offseason. And Bill Self is a madman. And this offseason has been pretty crazy for KU, to say the least. All right, we'll talk more about if Rylan Griffin, anything happens there. We'll talk about the Darius Acuff Jr. visit. At some point, we'll get to some more KU football content. Plenty more to come at you, so make sure you're subscribed anywhere you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page. We'll see you next time with LOJ.